Welcome, geeks, to another exciting episode of Rockin the Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter. I'm glad you're all here this week. It's in San Diego, California today. It's a little bit gloomy, but I'm not complaining. We have a freaking awesome weather here, so you usually never hear me complaining about the weather here. Anyway, how's your weekend going? Do you have any exciting plans? You can put them in the chat. Let me know what you're up to. Also, put in the chat what country you're from. That'd be interesting. So let's get the show going. Got a big guest today, and I want to make sure we spend a lot of time with Khalid. And so today our guest is Khalid from JetBrains Software. He's a developer advocate. And so, some of the things, we have on the list to talk about are ASP.NET Core, HTMX, Entity Framework, and JetBrains Rider. So put your questions in the chat right now and let us know what you want us to talk about today. Otherwise, we'll just talk about whatever we want. So it's your fault. I do... Again, unfortunately, it seems like we're stuck. The Ukraine is still stuck in a war. So I kind of want to bring it up. Make sure your thoughts and prayers go to the poor people in Ukraine dealing with this crap. I hear, the Ukrainian army are taking over some spots that the Russians took. So that's always good news. But I think we're far from this being over. So if you can help, please help any way you can. I know I told you all that I have friends in Ukraine, and as of now, I've been able to reach all but one of them so far, and they're all okay. So I'm glad they're doing fine. They're all still in Ukraine. Which I don't know. Me, I would have. I don't know. I can't say. But anyway, make sure you support the companies that are pulling out of Russia and doing the sanctions against Russia to get this thing stopped. Because at this point, I don't see how it's going to in the near future, at least. So anyway, think about the Ukraine. I have a brand new article out. It just came out yesterday. It's all about using async await with disposable objects. So if you're using disposable objects with async and await, there's a little trick you have to do to get it to actually work properly. And so I wrote an article about that. And so I hope you check it out. I just learned it, so I tried to make it easier to understand than Microsoft documentation and put it up on there. So I hope you can check it out. And also, I don't want to forget that if you have any ideas for articles you would like to see me write, since I'm a featured writer on CSharpCorner, please reach out to me and let me know. I'm always looking for article ideas. And so no idea will, I'll entertain every idea. Not saying I'm going to do it, but I'll entertain any idea for article ideas, because I write for you, so I want to know what you want to hear about, no matter what that is. I don't care what it is, even career stuff or speaking, how to speak and things like that. Not speak, but how to speak at conferences. I want to make sure that's clear. So anyway, I hope you check it out. And with that, I'm going to bring on Khalid. Khalid has been working with .NET ever since the beginning and has spent the better part of a career working with ASP.NET. Recently, he's enjoyed helping others learning through .NET through blogging and Twitter. So welcome.
Hey, everybody. Hey, David.
Hey.
By the way, that intro, that was really rocking. I felt like I needed to do like my best wrestler Hulk
Hang
Hogan
your
impression.
head.
Yeah. So again, thank you for having me. I'm just excited to talk to devs. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
And I kind of wanted to mention real quick that this is the first time I've met you. We haven't really hung out, and so I want to make sure people know that I'm trying to reach out to people I don't even know and having them on the show. For me, usually it's somehow I get following somebody's Twitter feed. And if I find that Twitter feed interesting, like, I don't know how many freaking tips you post a day, but it's, I don't know what you do there at JetBrains, because it just seems like you're just posting tips all day. And
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do have the occasional tip intermingled with some spicy hot takes. So I am an interesting Twitter account to follow. So if your viewers are interested, follow me on Twitter.
Yeah. Well, that's how I found you and started watching. And I think I've even looked at some of your samples and go, maybe I should put that in my open source project. And I think I have a couple times. So. And I like people that seem to have some character and seem I don't know the word, the character, I guess, and and so I'll have anybody on the show, pretty much. And
okay, yeah, thank you.
That came out wrong. I want to invite anybody to come on the show. If you have something you really want to talk about that you're passionate about. So this is one of the ways I found somebody, by just, doing Twitter, so. And speaking of that, all of my followers in India, you should be on Twitter, not Facebook. I don't know much of anybody posting tech stuff on Facebook. And so Twitter is kind of the place to find the tech things to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think the thing I really love about Twitter too is like you get like a direct, unfiltered access to folks in our community, and you kind of get an opportunity to build relationships. So with Twitter, it's just more natural. Whereas like I've talked to folks who maybe are working on their LinkedIn profiles and stuff like that, and to some degree it's important, but it also feels very businessy. Whereas like the relationships I'm looking for, somebody in the dev community, I want to be friends with folks, like I want to talk to them. I want to joke around. I want to work on projects together. So for me, Twitter is really a great place for that. So I recommend it.
Yeah. So I know Facebook is really big in India, but come on, guys and gals, get a Twitter account and follow me and him, and maybe you'll learn something in the process, right?
I hope so. Yeah.
My articles and stuff still get automatically posted, onto Facebook, but I really don't use Facebook anymore. I'm over it, and
So let me ask you a question, David. You're writing articles, like what do you feel like your niche is in the .NET community in terms of like, are you a web guy? Are you desktop, mobile, maybe something else?
Well, in my career, I've done everything, everything from mobile to, I had my first website in 1994, when we had to do it in Notepad. Me and Carl Franklin were doing our, because I actually piggybacked off of Carl Franklin's server. And so him and I were doing, HTML pages in Notepad back then, but, in the last 10 plus years, I've kind of purposely trying to be focused on the back end more, for a lot of reasons, just because, the front end stuff just changes so rapidly. And I kind of wanted to concentrate on one area. When .NET started getting, bigger, right, where you couldn't know everything, right? Because in the beginning, you kind of couldn't know everything in the beginning of .NET, what they can now call a full stack developer. But I don't believe that's really that true anymore, and so I chose to, focus on the back end, but I can do pretty much everything. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like over 15 years, I'd probably say I would consider myself an ASP.NET like web developer. I just really love the simplicity of like the HTTP protocol and, just the stateless request in, response back, that kind of stuff. So it just kind of clicks in my head. But, like coming to JetBrains has been really interesting part of my career. This is the first developer advocacy position I've ever had. And I was a little worried at first, but getting into JetBrains, it's been interesting because I have an opportunity not only to work on web development things, but I get to see what kind of desktop applications folks are building. I get to see, even last week, I was at the Game Developers Conference in San Francisco, and I just get to see what people are doing with game engines like Unreal and Unity. So it's been really eye-opening just to talk to those developers and to talk to those teams and just maybe kind of stretch my horizon a little bit and see what other folks are doing. So, but the web is still my first love. That's kind of what I'll always stick to. And it's really an interesting time right now in the web. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, one of the things that I plan on doing, hopefully, as soon as I get the .NET 6 version of my open source stuff out, my next project is rewriting an app that I've had for developers for a while now, and rewriting it in Maui hybrid. So I'm gonna, and during the summit this week, I don't know if a lot of you know, but the Microsoft MVP Summit was this week, and I got the PM on the team to agree that if I need some hand holding in that process, he'll help me out. He said okay. So
is that
Daniel Roth?
Oh,
Daniel Roth.
I got it.
Yeah. So he's going to be my probably get sick of questions from me, but Maui's brand new, so it's not going to work right. And
well, what's interesting with Maui for me is like there's your typical XAML like powered front end. They're adding MVU stuff, which is like a different UI building mechanism. But I think the thing that's compelling to me are going to be kind of those Blazor bindings. So being able to use HTML and a combination of like SignalR and Blazor to kind of build a native application. I think that's most compelling to me. Like I'm excited to kind of see that and maybe get my hands on it once that those bits become more stable, I guess. So.
Stable, yeah. So some of the stuff they were showing this week at the summit, we can't talk much about what we saw this week, but some of the the Maui stuff look pretty cool, and so we'll see how they deliver,
Yeah,
I don't know if I'd use it right away for production, but until the kinks get worked out, but it's definitely interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, especially, I think Maui has a little bit to catch up in terms of like the front end or the native app community, because if you look at the open source stuff that's happening right now in .NET, it's really exciting. You have Uno platform, you have Avalonia. Avalonia is really cool. Actually, we're using Avalonia at JetBrains to kind of rewrite some of our WPF stuff and convert it over so that it's cross-platform. So we're really excited about that kind of stuff. So definitely check those out if you're interested. Even in Maui, check those out and see if it's an option for you. So
yeah, cool. So don't forget, everybody, ask questions. I got a JetBrains expert here because he works for the dang company. I hope he's an expert. So, make sure you got to have some kind of issue with the JetBrains product. Come on,
No, it's perfect. At GDC, working the booth is almost one of the easiest jobs at the really? JetBrains booth because it's just, we get high fives. We love you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. So it's the easiest job ever. So
yeah. I think one time when I was speaking somewhere and Grape City was sponsoring me, I was, their booth was right next to the JetBrains booth, and so it was a cool place to hang out because neither of the companies are super high pressure and they're not trying to grab you and suck you in and those kind of things. And speaking of which, I don't know if you've been to an in-person conference yet, but man, I really want one. I really need to go to one to kind of like you were saying, to see what other people are doing, right? And going to a conference is one of the best ways you can do that, especially if you start talking to people you don't know. which I recommend everybody to do when you're at a conference.
Yeah, it's really easy for all of us to kind of get stuck in our own bubbles, whether we're working at a company or whether you're developer advocacy. So I agree with you. Conferences are a nice way to kind of pop that bubble and just kind of peek into other people's. So yeah, I've been to AWS reInvent this year and then GDC. Both booth duty. I didn't really get to go to a lot of sessions, but the nice thing about those two conferences is most of those sessions end up being on YouTube. So you can kind of go back and watch them, which is really nice. Yeah.
Well, my first in-person conference since 2019 will be in June. I'm going to Australia to speak at the NDC conference there. So I'm super excited about that because I've been wanting to go to Australia ever since I was in my 20s. It's a longer story I won't tell publicly, but but I've always wanted to go there. You know, it looks beautiful, and I've always wanted to check that country out. So luckily NDC will be paying for my trip, and so I get to go, and I'm going to go do some touristy stuff and that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah, the only thing that worries me about Australia is I've seen pictures of those spiders, so I think that's the one thing that I am concerned about going to Australia. So
well,
wear long pants is what I've heard.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that kind of reminds me of when I went to Africa and I took a safari, and one of the places, you know, we're in this big natural preserve and a VW bus, and you know, and so we passed by this anthill, and I swear to you, the holes at the top are like this big, and I'm going, I do not want to see the ant coming out of that hole right there. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been on safari too, and it's one of those things I definitely recommend everybody, if they get a chance to do it, because it's super exciting, it's fun, and you get to kind of see the wildlife, which is really, you know, what the point of a safari is. It's pretty cool. So
yeah, well, in 2019 when I went to Mauritius, I did this thing they called it, and you all can go look it up, the pictures and everything, but I did this thing called the Walk with Lions, where they basically put you in this big open enclosure with like 3 lions. Well, they put you in first. They put like 15 of you in this enclosure, shut it, and then release 3 lions, you know, and there's no guns, there's no weapons. Everybody, including the handlers, just have these big sticks, right? That's all we have, right? and but even though it was kind of scary in the beginning, I thought that was so cool, where we could just walk up to lions and pet them, and you know, that was really neat. And the cool thing with that safari place, you know, in Mauritius was there's like none of the animals were in cages. They were all just roaming around, walking around. You could walk right up to them and take pictures, and you know, it was really cool. Yeah,
yeah. I got a
little scary.
Yeah, I got a little fat on my bones, so I'd be worried that the lions would want to take a bite of me. But no, that sounds amazing.
It was, and it's the only place I know in the world that. So I know there's another place in Taiwan that does something similar, but they drug the lions. And you know, even when I went to buy my ticket to Walk with Lions, I go, "You don't drug the lions, right?" And they go, "No." I go, "Okay," because I'm not going to participate in anything that drugs animals like that.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so I asked, you know, when we're waiting for the lions to come down, I asked my handler, I go, so when's the last time they ate, you know? and he said like, oh, 3 days ago. I go, what? And he goes, no, they only eat like every 3 days or so, right? They don't eat every day like we do.
Yeah.
But then I asked him, I said, you know, these 3 lions, there was a male, a big male, a female, and then a younger female. And you know, I asked him, I said, you know, all 3 of these lions could care less we were even here. They're barely acknowledging our existence, right? Why is that? Right? And because they're not drugging them, right? And he goes, oh, because since they're born, they're raised with humans, and so they don't care.
That makes sense.
That's how they do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're getting way off topic now. So see what happens, everybody, if you don't ask questions. So let's talk. So what do you want to talk about ASP.NET Core?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like you're saying, you mentioned earlier, you're thinking about moving some of your open source stuff to .NET 6. One of the big releases in .NET 6 was ASP.NET Core minimal APIs, and in addition to that, minimal hosting. Like, have you had a lot of experience with that? Like, what are your feelings? What are your thoughts so far about the minimal hosting model?
So honestly, I haven't used it yet. I've just seen people talking about it, and then I saw people talking about it this week at the MVP Summit. And I don't know, being in this world as long as you and I have been, and with all the declaration that has to happen with everything, it kind of scares me a bit, right? Because I'm going, where's all the configuration? Where's all the declarations? You're doing this in one line of code? Come on. That can't possibly work in production, right?
Yeah, it's
How about you?
it's been kind of cool, at least for me, being a developer advocate. I end up writing a lot of demos and like trying to recreate things for folks just to kind of show them. So it's kind of been nice from that perspective. Like, you can basically fit a demo app into like one file. That's typically not representative of like what you would push into production if you're writing, say, like a monolith with like a lot of endpoints and a lot of pages and a lot of user interaction. But I have a blog post about using kind of a minimal API application in conjunction with Playwright. Playwright's like a front end integration testing style framework. But you can use it to kind of like spin up a web application, generate an HTML page, and then take a quick screenshot. So you can like, you can generate, say, like social media cards. And a lot of folks have actually done that. One of the folks that works on Spectre Console actually ended up doing that for his personal blog. So it's kind of neat for those small demo applications for sure. So, yeah.
Well, if it's neat for demos, I hope people, I mean, sometimes Microsoft has come out with stuff that makes things really simple, and that's all they demo, right? And then you go to your work and go, well, this isn't going to work. It's great for demoing, but this is not for real time stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it will eventually get there. Like most things Microsoft puts out, they put out the initial version, which is like maybe 70% complete. It's like usable, but there's still some like missing spots. I think Damien Edwards just put out a tweet asking for feedback in .NET 7 for minimal API enhancements.
I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So just looking through those issues this morning, I think there's like a lot of good work going into minimal APIs to kind of bring it up to where MVC and Razor pages are currently. So like I think folks should keep an eye on it, but if you start using it and it's just not fitting your current use case or workflow, switch over to Razor pages or switch back to MVC. Like, I think those communities around Razor pages and MVC shouldn't be discounted. There's a lot of good open source around MVC already, especially with like the MVC pipeline, things like attributes and model binding and stuff like that, which is still technically kind of missing in minimal API. You kind of have to roll your own in some cases. So like there's advantages and disadvantages, and like choosing one over the other, you're going to have to make some sacrifices. So just keep that in mind. Like, that's kind of what I've been telling people about it. So
it's what was I thinking? Oh, I also saw a tweet. I don't know if it was this week. Someone kind of tweeted without any real explanation of every microservice endpoint should be an API, should be an HTTP call, right? And I was thinking about that, going, well, I guess you could do that, right? But I'm not sure if I would for a large project, for sure. Maybe a really small project, but not a large one, but I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I will say we were recommending Twitter earlier, but I will say there's a lot of non-contextual advice given on Twitter. And I think anytime you read someone making absolute statement,
Yeah.
you should take a step back, think about the context that they're in and why they're giving that advice versus the context that you're in and whether it would actually work for you. Right. Like, so I see a lot of folks, and I do office hours so people can like schedule it. I typically talk to like folks trying to get into tech, small teams. Sometimes I talk to like, chief executives for, that are trying to like start their startup. So I talk to like a wide range of people, but a common question people ask is like, should I move my entire application to a microservice architecture? And I will say, like, for most teams, especially small teams, the overhead of like a microservices architecture can actually slow you down.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's like, be cautious. The thing I do recommend folks do is use observability. So like, there's companies like Honeycomb out there. Elastic has its own kind of telemetry. Application Insights in Azure is a really great option.
I know. I like it.
Yeah, it's great. So I feel like the biggest bang for your buck a lot of teams can get is to put some of those observability tools into their application and actually measure like where their hot paths are in their application. And if you need more resources like memory, CPU, or network IO, you can kind of pull those things out and then turn those into microservices,
right?
Rather than trying to like predict where your hot paths are going to be. So
yeah,
that's what I typically recommend. I don't know what you would recommend for folks thinking about moving to microservices.
Well, the beginning of that statement kind of worried me a bit because it's from not from what you said, from what your friend said or whoever you were talking to, going, should I put my whole application into microservices? And this is the problem too many teams, maybe smaller teams, get into, is they go, oh, they hear microservices is all great, so let's do everything in microservices. No, that's not what they're designed to do, right? It's no, and I've seen this over and over again in my career where they take one thing and go way too far with it, and then they get stuck and they have to back everything out, which costs a lot of money, and pissed off customers and things like that. And so, it's my typical thing is, and I've been preaching this ever since I started teaching cloud at the university, and that is, anything what's a good candidate to move into the cloud immediately is anything that you don't have to process this millisecond, right? Like if you're just doing updates or you're just getting the latest data from something, that can go into queuing and microservices. So you really, for me, you should be using microservices for anything you need to queue to be processed, right? Because not only is it super easy to do that, but it's super easy to expand the processing immediately. If you get like Comic-Con starts selling their tickets, right? They go down every freaking year, right? It's because of this, right? It's because they don't have enough processing to handle that one day where all the tickets get sold, right? Because the rest of the day, the rest of the year, their website traffic is flat, right?
Yep.
Only one day when they get hit like that. And every year they go down and I go, yep, should have used Azure,
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, for me being in tech, you've probably been in tech way longer than me, but I think the thing that for me gets lost in a lot of conversations is like the non-tech stuff, right? So, regardless of what architecture you end up picking and what you choose, like we don't talk enough about, how teams are structured. Can teams actually maintain and manage a particular pattern or style? Do they have buy-in from stakeholders to invest in some of the architectures that they chose, right? Like some companies operate under a sense of urgency to kind of hit a particular deadline. We don't always have the luxury to kind of step back and take, a year re-architecting a system. So those are kind of like the soft, squishy, contextual things that sometimes I feel our industry kind of brushes over, and we just jump straight into like the technical parts of it. So it's like, how fast is going to be? Does it allocate memory? It's like those things are important, but at the end of the day, it's a industry driven by people, and the people problems are just as important to kind of tackle. So keep that in mind as well.
Sometimes even bigger, right? And
yeah,
a number of years ago, I wrote an article titled something that, I think conferences should not only teach what we want to learn, but what we need to learn, right? And what I talked about that is exactly what you're talking about, the soft skills of being a software engineer, right? Because there's a lot to being a software engineer than coding, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going to be successful in this world, there's a lot to it than just coding, or even just teaching architecture, right? They don't even do that, pretty much hardly at all anymore. And they'd never talk about it at conferences, right? And I've tried to get conferences to pick up soft skill sessions, and they just won't do it, and that's kind of why I wrote the articles, because you need to have sessions that bring in the people, but you also need sessions to make them a better developer, right? And I can't get it through their head at this point.
I will say that's one of my favorite parts of, like, even before I ever went to the Game Developers Conference, GDC, a lot of their sessions are actually styled retrospectively. So it's like, it's a lot of folks talking about what games they've built, what systems and mechanics that they built into a game that's already been released to the wider public. But in a way, it's like you're seeing what actually happened, and you're getting a retrospective on that. Sometimes in like tech circles, sessions are more aspirational. Like, hey, I found this particular technology. I may not have run it in production yet, but I have hopes that it's going to be good. And there's a danger in those kind of sessions, not to be Chicken Little about it, but like when you recommend a particular technology that's not been vetted or stable yet, and you go into production, it really is a risk and a gamble. Like, you may run into a system breaking bug in some of these, recommendations, and the speaker who recommended that to you, they're long gone. They're off doing their thing, but now you're stuck with this potential choice that you've made. So just be cautious, I guess.
I wish conferences would get better at those kind of things for sure, because those are the toughest things to teach. And most of us, if not everybody, learns by just doing it and failing and learning the right way of doing it, right? And and it's just not taught very well. And that's why, and this is the point I wanted to make, and that's why, and this is even the tagline for my website, real world tips and tricks, right? Everything that I write about is something that I'm doing, right? And that you can take that article and go to work tomorrow or the next, when you get home, and start using it right now, right? And I have focused. I even did that when I was teaching at the university. I made people write things that were more real world and not a freaking calculator or something like that, right? That nobody needs, right? And I've always focused on that, because I feel it's my duty to make sure that whatever someone's learning, they can use now, right? And now at work. And so I try to, and I tend to talk a lot more in my conference talks, is because I'm telling stories about this. Like every conference talks, I'm telling stories about how I got here and why I'm doing this and things like that, right?
Yeah, I think you and I probably have a similar writing style in the sense of, like, when I first started blogging, some of my posts were just kind of embarrassing. I'll just say it like they were like a grown man's diary. Like, oh, I woke up today and I had a muffin and I decided to do some push-ups or something.
Yeah,
And I slowly came to realize like there's no value. Like maybe the value is for me, but there's no value for like the broader audience that I was trying to reach.
right.
And yeah, I would say my writing style nowadays is more of a there's this problem and I'm presenting you with a solution. And I find that it's not really about focusing on me, but focusing on the problem and then giving people value and trying to get them over a particular hurdle they might be struggling with. So I found that format to be just better in general for me. But there is space for things like opinions or thoughts, or if you're trying to become a thought leader, please feel free to write those blog posts. But I've just found they're not my style. So
yeah.
Yep.
Well, we do have a couple questions I want to get to real quick, because there's definitely something else I want to talk to you about. And so, welcome from Italy. I don't remember anybody from Italy being on the show live, and so welcome. I hope you come back. Also, you were asked. So there was another one. Oh, what is a good test tool or tools to automate with? What do you think?
Yeah. So I think unit testing is still a good thing, but in the early days of .NET, it was very, very difficult to kind of spin up the .NET process, spin up like database tools and engines and stuff like that. Thank goodness we're in 2022 where like the landscape has shifted. So I would recommend things like .NET and ASP.NET Core in particular has great integration testing tools. So, XUnit, being able to spin up like a Docker container within an XUnit test, and then, taking a snapshot of a database and doing that kind of stuff. Like those are good tools. Playwright, I mentioned earlier, is great for, say, spinning up an ASP.NET Core application and then exercising the UI to kind of get a particular result. So Playwright is really cool for that. But yeah, like any particular integration testing suites like Selenium, like I know people still use that. But for me, XUnit or NUnit in combination with things like Docker or, like the ASP.NET Core test server classes, those are really good places to start. So
yeah, and I a week and a half or so more ago, I had a one-on-one meeting with Microsoft. They were digging my brain about what I want to see, because I've been complaining to them ever since .NET Core has come out, is that they dropped the IntelliTest feature, which I was not happy about, and so I've been bugging them ever since. Anyway, they're finally starting to work on it now, and so they picked my brain for an hour. But but that's something else we need. We need something to automate writing our unit tests, right? Because and that's what if you've never used IntelliTest, they only work in the .NET framework, but basically IntelliTest is almost instant way to create all the unit tests you need that test encapsulation, right? That's what it does. And then you can add your business logic on top of that, right? And because none of us really like writing unit tests, right? And quite frankly, lately I spend more time writing the unit tests than I do the actual code, right? And so we want to get there quicker, because I've been at companies that won't even let you write unit tests because of the cost, right? And so we need to get there really quick, and that's what IntelliTest does. So it's not going to come out in the next version of .NET, but hopefully in the one after that. But that's something else we need to help us write unit tests in the first place and then execute them.
Yeah, I'm curious with things like source generators and stuff, if folks can literally write some meta class to kind of target a particular unit in your application, and then just basically generate, because that's kind of what you're talking about. Like our methods or our classes, they take a lot of inputs, and we don't always like check the weird edge cases that could potentially happen.
I can guarantee you we don't.
Yeah. Early in Microsoft's research phase, like this is probably 10 years ago, I would say. There was a library called like PEX or something.
PEX. Well, PEX actually IntelliTest is based off of PEX, actually. Yes.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. I remember PEX, and I was like, oh, this is super cool. Like this is interesting. I will say though, it's more of like a technical testing library than it is, say, like you were saying, it's not going to figure out your business rules. It's not going to know that, oh, this is a shopping cart application and people need to check out. Like it just doesn't do that. But it's super interesting from that perspective. Yeah.
Well, whenever I talk about it, I say, and when I talk about object-oriented programming and conferences and stuff, I always say, you know what, I can't get you guys to do encapsulation right. So I have no hope of the other two or three, right? So, but at least IntelliTest helps you do that encapsulation test, because that's super important if you want to release code that doesn't break, on you. And that's the most embarrassing thing, is you release some code or an API and you start getting null exceptions and things like that. And it brings down the entire customer, right? And that's not good. Not at all.
Well, let me ask you this question, because I've been thinking about this for me personally, right? And I'm curious to see what the audience thinks as they're watching. But like from .NET Framework 1.0 to where we are and where we're going with .NET 7, right? There's been a lot of shifting landscapes. There's a lot that's kind of happened. Like, what do you feel are like the big pillars / touchstones in the .NET community that have been pretty stable? And what do you feel has changed for the better? And what do you feel has potentially changed for the worse?
Well, let me take the last part first, because I forgot the first part already. So you're going to have to tell me again. But I think, as far as the good and the bad about, what's going on with the ecosystem with .NET is, I think we all could probably agree that, the direction Microsoft has been going ever since they started embracing open source is a good thing. I think it's really helped them out. They seem to really enjoy it. I think sometimes it might be a little too much. I think they need to rely on more experts and not just every Joe Blow programmer out there for opinions. But with that said, working with Microsoft back in the day and working with Microsoft now is like completely different, right? Because they used to be Microsoft's or the highway kind of thing, right? And so it's really nice to see Microsoft, especially Azure, embrace everything, right? They're not going to be one of these companies that say you have to do it our way or you're not doing it, right? And so, but I guess the bad part of that is I think that because of that and because of the speed of the way things are moving in our world, that they've kind of stopped doing some things that are really important. Like I'll even say documentation, right? Microsoft keeps saying they're going to get better documentation and they just get worse, right? And or like we were, before the show, we were talking about, the slowness of Visual Studio, right? Visual Studio to me just keeps getting worse to me, and so, and we need to have a tool. The tools shouldn't get in our way, I guess is what I'm trying to say, right? So I wish Microsoft would put more effort into making sure that happens with Visual Studio. I think there's just too much to do and not enough resources like any other company. And so I don't know. What do you think?
I'm gonna defend the Visual Studio team, which is weird as a JetBrains.
I know, because you make Rider.
Yeah. But I will say, I think you're right in the sense of like Microsoft is a global company. They constantly talk about planet scale. So they they're kind of in a tough position where they need to evolve Visual Studio, but there's also a lot of legacy folks still using versions of Visual Studio that they have to support. So it's like, I do think like moving to 64-bit for Visual Studio is great. You know, I think there's going to be a lot of improvements. Like from a Visual Studio perspective, they are moving a lot of their extensions out of process. So that's upcoming, which should help kind of memory utilization and potential crashes from any extensions that you have. So, you know, there's a lot of things happening in Visual Studio, but it is kind of like trying to redirect a cruise ship at this point. It's like it probably is a monumental effort, and we just see kind of what is happening in the public, but I'm sure there's a lot happening inside the walls of Microsoft. I will say though, it's like this shameless plug for Rider, but like Rider for me is like my preferred IDE of choice. It works on Windows, Mac OS, which is my primary operating system, and I've also used it on Linux. So for me, having a cohesive .NET programming experience across any operating system is really great. And especially as a developer advocate, I'm talking to people with like all these different environments, and it's nice to be able to try things and experience the problems that folks are having on any one of those operating systems and kind of help solve those problems for them. So it's like I would recommend Rider, but full disclosure, that is my job to recommend Rider.
Yeah, of course. So, you have to say that, right?
Well, I have to, because you know, you just have to say it. But I will say, I think Microsoft overall is doing a great job with .NET. One thing I lament, I don't know if you can kind of go back and rewrite history or think about it, but that shift between full framework and .NET Core, while in hindsight was a really good decision, like we're just in a much better place now. It did kind of like stutter the open source community inside .NET, right? Like the foundations that everybody built upon were kind of exploded, right? To kind of make way for this new thing.
Right.
And I think that kind of like hurt the open source movement in .NET from a community perspective, right? Like Microsoft moved to open source, but the community kind of had to go back to all the packages that they've developed and reevaluate, like, well, how do I move from full framework and ASP.NET over to something like, you know, ASP.NET Core? So only now are we kind of starting to kind of recover from that. But I think the damage was kind of done for that. And I'm curious to see, as .NET 7 comes out and .NET 8, like hopefully those ASP.NET Core APIs are stabilizing. Those .NET Core .NET APIs are stabilizing to the point where like folks feel comfortable again dedicating long hours to building open source projects. But it's really speculation. So I would say that was one of the casualties of like moving from full framework to .NET Core. So
but Microsoft should have done it then. But I think maybe, you know, one thing I was thinking about when you were talking about that was you know, maybe Microsoft needs to kind of bite the bullet and say, okay, you know, from Visual Studio 2024 on, it is not going to support the framework anymore, right? We're only going to support .NET from now on, and maybe that'll alleviate some of this baggage that we've had ever since the beginning of 2000, right? And and so I don't know. I don't know what the solution is, but something's got to happen with Visual Studio, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's I will say though too, it's like .NET is a wide, like diverse community of like people and companies and organizations, and like, you know, you still have remnants of the enterprise .NET crew where like we don't move from one version to the other. We're going to maintain on, you know, .NET 4 or .NET 3.5 even sometimes I hear. So it is tough, and I think the thing that concerns me about folks not having an opportunity to transition from, say, full framework to .NET Core, .NET as it's now known, is like that gap that they're going to have to jump over just keeps getting wider and wider.
Yes, it does. Yes.
I worry for those folks. I really do. It's going to be painful.
Well, those folks are me, because I've got a brand new job as a lead enterprise architect, and everything at the company is .NET Framework legacy, like written 20 years ago. Oh. And so one of my jobs is to take that and to move them into the cloud and .NET and .NET, .NET Core essentially. And so, yeah, that's what I'm starting to do right now. And so, yeah, I'm going to probably have a lot of articles of that coming out. So I could start going through that architecture. But I did want to ask a question while you're here real quick, because we were talking about this before the show started. And so those of you who don't know what we're talking about when we're talking about JetBrains Rider, JetBrains Rider is basically the IDE, for .NET written by JetBrains from scratch. Mm-hmm. And so, one of my ideas was to have someone like you come on the show in the future and convince me why I should move away from Visual Studio to JetBrains and to Rider. And so anybody on watching the call right now, or you can email me if you're watching the recording, please let me know if you would enjoy a show like that, because these shows are, as you see, are mostly just talking, right? And so that show would be a lot of demoing. And so I want to make sure you guys aren't going to say, oh, screw you, Dave, you're doing demos now like everybody else. And so let me know if you'd like him to come back on and convince me to use Rider, because I purposely, because I've wanted to do this show for a while now, I purposely have never downloaded Rider, so I don't even know how it works. And all I hear is everybody talking about it and how great it is. So
yeah, I'll say, I'll give folks like a little peek into it, though. It's like I just learned this joining JetBrains almost 2 years ago, but the name Rider comes from the fact that like the backend, the C# language server that powers Rider is actually ReSharper. So if you're a Visual Studio user who uses ReSharper, the ReSharper plugin, I think ReSharper is the #1 plugin in Visual Studio. Last time I checked. But if you do, like, ReSharper powers Rider. So R in Rider stands for ReSharper, and then IDE. So it's a ReSharper IDE Rider, right? So like, it's a fun little Easter egg, I think, and nod to kind of ReSharper that powers Rider. So
well, we're getting close to the end. So welcome, Amara. I'm glad you're here. John, thanks for the text, especially the one looking forward to reading my books. Yeah, I make $3. Yeah. But I write books not for the money, because you don't make money in tech books. I do it because I like helping people. If I wrote books for the money, they would not be tech books. That's for sure. My brother writes fiction. He probably makes a heck of a lot more money than I do. So
plus, there's movie rights, right? In fiction, there's no movie rights in tech books. No one's going to make a movie about C#.
No, actually, when I've written for big publishing houses, they make you sign your movie rights away. I'm serious. It's in the contract. If you read the contract, it's in there.
Oh man.
And theme park rights. You have to sign away your theme park rights.
I can't wait to ride the async await ride at Disney World. It's gonna be great.
See, that would be awesome, right? the endless loop. It never stops.
Loop. Oh my god.
The infinite loop never stops.
Maybe that should be an episode all by itself. Like if .NET was a theme park, what rides would you expect?
That's a good idea. We should do a show just on that. Let's design a .NET theme park.
Yeah.
Or programming theme park. What would it be like? We don't need Dolly World. We need Tech World, right? Or whatever it would be called, right?
Yeah.
So I gotta let you go before Simon gets upset at me. I have 2 questions I always ask everybody at the end, and I hope to get you back on the show to talk about Rider, though no one has said anything yet. Maybe I'll get some emails later, hopefully. So besides coding, what do you like to do for fun?
Yeah, my wife and I like to travel. So I think the only continent you've mentioned that we haven't been to is Australia. I don't count Antarctica. It is a continent, but like
Nobody stays there.
yeah, like you might go there to like see some penguins. Oh wait, the
Right.
penguins are on the South Pole. So no, scratch
That's
that.
right.
There's nothing in Antarctica. But no, we love to travel. Some of my favorite places, South Africa, Japan. I've been to China too, so I'd love to go to India someday. But we'll see. Korea would be awesome. So I'm excited for when this whole pandemic thing kind of winds down, that we can kind of get back to normal travel. So I'm excited about that.
The next time I go to India, you should come. You know,
yeah,
be fun.
Well,
you know,
the CSharpCorner wants to send me there. I'm game. So,
well,
but
no, get your company to send you there. Get JetBrains to send you.
But yeah, we sometimes at JetBrains we do like tours of countries and kind of go to like businesses and user groups. So it's definitely a thing that could happen in the future. If people are excited to have us, that might be an option. Another thing I enjoy is retro games. So I feel bad. My wife bought me a PS5. It's still sitting in the box. Right now, I'm just playing old retro NES and Super NES games, and you know, Sega Genesis. So
Sega.
Those have been.
I remember Sega when my son was little. Yeah.
Yeah. The nice
Sonic
thing
the
is,
Hedgehog.
yeah, the nice thing is with emulators is you could typically like save it. Like realizing going back and playing some of those old retro games, you realize just how cheap they are. They're designed to be so hard that the replay value comes out of just like killing you instantly. So it's nice to get my revenge on some of those old classic games that I've never been able to beat. So that's
I'm trying to I like the old early electronic games like that, and like you play in a game play where you go a game place or whatever they're called. And I'm trying to remember the name of it. I'm not going to remember it, but I remember they used to have a game that actually run off of Laserdisc. It was like really high quality. It was this Knights of the Round Table kind of thing, right? And it was really high quality for the day because it was running off of a Laserdisc, which at the time was quality for that time, right? Back in the 70s or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think you're thinking of Dragon's Lair.
Yeah, Dragon Slayer. There you go. That's it.
There you go.
Okay, and do you have anything to plug besides Rider? We've already plugged Rider.
No, just follow me on Twitter. I typically will promote things like my blog post. I do a series of .NET tips, which a lot of people have responded to positively. I've also inspired others to kind of do the same. So if you're interested in getting into that, please feel free to. I don't own pictures, so I don't feel offended if other people start it. So yeah, follow me on Twitter. Go check out JetBrains products if you're interested. I'm not here to sell it, but like we've mentioned it a couple times. So go check out Rider if you're interested in .NET development, either on Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. It just works the same across all three. So yeah.
And I hope to have you back and we can talk. You can convince me to use Rider.
Oh yeah.
I'm not going to download it until I have one of you people on my show. And so I can be surprised with everybody else that sees it. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate you spending a part of your Saturday morning with us, and this has been a great discussion. We didn't hardly get to much of anything on the list, but that's okay. That's what this show is about. And again, if you want him to come back on the show and talk and just demo all of us Rider for an hour or close to an hour, let me know, and I'll have you come on the show. But you're always you're always welcome to come on the show whenever you want. Just let me know.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, this has been really fun. And yeah, thanks everybody for watching. And hopefully we'll get to chat on Twitter and talk about things. So
yeah, thank you so much. Well, if you're not signed up to Twitter, you should sign up just to follow him. That's all I'm saying. I look forward to his tweets every day, because I know he's going to come out with multiple tweets every day about tips and things like that. And so definitely get on Twitter just to follow him and whoever else you like in this world on Twitter. All right. So we just got a couple more things. Before I forget, and can you go back to full frame, Simon? Me full frame? There you go. I forgot to mention at the top of the hour. I'm really sorry, but I wanted to show you this hockey jersey I'm wearing. It's an old Visual Studio hockey jersey. I think it's from 2003 because there's a big 3 on the back. But my friend who used to run the .NET user group here was cleaning out his house the other week or so ago, and he found this, which is too big for him because I'm bigger than he is, so I'm bigger than most people. And he said, "Hey, Dave, do you want it?" I go, "Yeah, sure." So anyway, I think that's pretty cool. I like it. Next time I go to Microsoft, I'm definitely wearing this. So if you have any old things that are in good shape, that are size XL in the US, you can send them to me and I'll be more than happy to wear it on the show. Geek related, of course, or music related, because those are my 2 big passions. Okay. I thank you, Andrew Karcher, for sending that to me. I really appreciate it. I want to make sure I plug Andrew, because I've known Andrew for a long time. Again, as always, I hope you go check out my code performance articles on my website. You can go there. A lot of the articles are free, some aren't. And if you sign up, it's really cheap. It's $4.99 a month to read my articles. So there you go. I'm saving up for retirement. And with every week, everybody watching the show right now, if you go to devexpress.com/dotNetDave, you can download your very own free copy of CodeRush from DevExpress. CodeRush is the only refactoring tool I've used since Visual Studio came out, and I love it. It helps me be a better programmer, and it's a real licensed copy. It's not a stripped down version. So I hope you go check it out. Also, I want to plug my book. And most of you probably know I started a new job, and I've been looking at some of the source, and I'm going, everybody needs a copy of my book where I work. I will say though, their code is a lot better than most of the contracts I've been working on lately. But if you don't have coding standards, or you need to get started with coding standards, please go pick up a copy of my book. It will help you on that way. All right. Also, yesterday I just donated $476 to the Voice of Slum in India. I have a GoFundMe going on right now for the kids in the slums in Delhi, India. You can go there and donate. I hope you do, because all that money that I donated is either from this campaign, or it's from if you didn't know that all the profit from my code performance book goes to the Voice of Slum too. And so that's the combination of those 2 values up until, this week. So I hope you go help out the kids in India. They really need your support. If you don't want to go through me, don't worry. I don't take offense to it. Just go to voiceofslum.org. And you can donate directly. You can even buy the kids' clothing and school supplies and things like that. I was there in 2019, and they really need your help. It was my first time actually walking through a slum in Delhi, and it's quite a moving experience. And so anything we can do to help out is a good thing to me. And you all know this. It's a passion of me because I talk about it all the time. Okay, with that, next week, I have Steve Jones. He works for Redgate Software, so he's going to be on. I'm looking forward to that. Also, please be safe and listen to your medical professionals about COVID. COVID's still happening. I think we're still have 1,000 people dying a day here in America. So please listen to your people. I know COVID is getting bigger in some countries like China and a couple other ones. So we're not over it. I'm going to get my second booster as soon as I can, maybe this weekend, hopefully. And in the meantime, please go donate blood, because everywhere there's a blood shortage and they need your help. I'm donating tomorrow. The last 2 times I've donated, my iron has been 1 or 2 points under the minimum. And so I've been eating a lot of iron-rich foods in the last 2 weeks, so I can donate tomorrow. So, and every one of your donations can help up to 3 people. And so that's a great thing. So please go do that. It's free, it's easy, and you get out of doing yard work and stuff for 24 hours. All right, with that, thanks for everybody for watching the show. Thanks to my guest. And please make sure you email me with comments, suggestions, who you'd like me to invite on the show, all that kind of good stuff. I didn't get any emails from last week, so please send me an email. I'll see you next week.